Gilbo, J Gilbo 11, taking a look at tonight's 14-game MLB slate, breaking everything down, looking at a lot of hitters, favorable spots to find offense. You can find all of our pitching notes and pitching breakdown in the Pitcher podcast that will be up. So if you're looking for that, that's a completely different pod, but I will touch on a couple arms that I do like here. And jumping right into things, 7:05 Mariners and Yankees, over/under of 8. Yankees are small favorites. Luis Severino against Nate Karns there, and kind of looking at this one, you like a lot of the Yankees, obviously, with those ballpark factors with that right field line. Look at it last season. Neither were particularly great against lefties, but they weren't bad either. Lefties had a 33% hard ball rate off of Karns. His ground ball rate was a little bit low, but a little bit below average there, sitting at 46%. 308 WOBA. Luis Severino, a little bit higher ground ball rate. 314 WOBA allowed. So, I mean, not a particularly, it's not an obvious matchup, but I think you're putting things into consideration of that right field line. You like guys like McCann. You'd like Teixeira, Cano as well, Ellsbury, Gardner, Seager, all kind of worthy of play tonight. Especially in GPPs, I think you can take a stronger look at the Seattle side. Yankees are a little bit safer for cash with Karns on the hill. Severino, a decent arm. So also you have the narrative of Cano coming back to Yankee Stadium where he had some solid power numbers. But really you're taking a look at those lefties. As I mentioned, Teixeira, a solid GPP option. McCann back and healthy as well. So those guys will be guys I'm really keeping an eye on. Next 7:05 game, Joe Ross versus Jeremy Hellickson, 7.5 over/under there. Not expecting a ton of offense out of this game, and I like Joe Ross as a cheap pitcher, especially in GPPs. You look at Hellickson last season, allowed a 339 WOBA to lefties with a 1.19 home runs per 9. So obviously Bryce Harper stands out as an option on a full slate. He's going to get a little bit lower ownership just because there are some stronger options, and he is very expensive. But he is a guy who can go off. He's a great cash game play as always, although he is expensive. Just due to his high on-base percentage. I mean, this guy rarely leaves you hanging just because he's walks, he's hitting for power. He does it all, stolen bases. So Harper, just an elite play. Daniel Murphy, he's the other name that I like. He's really been, the more consistent guy out of the gate here for Washington, and kind of sits in that price tag. That's not too bad. Although you're looking on DraftKings, I mean, he's only 200 less than Manny Machado, who's facing a lefty in Texas. That is interesting. So, price consideration there, I think, you're obviously taking Machado, but Murphy definitely worth a look. And on FanDuel there, he's 3,600. So he would be a nice swerve because I think out of Cano and Murphy, Cano will still be the popular choice. But still, Murphy has been a proven bat here to start the season. So really, those are the only two names I'm looking at from that Washington side on a full slate here. I do like Joe Ross. Once again, I'll go more into him on the pitcher pod. Kind of identical to his brother Tyson as far as pitching goes. Obviously, he's going to draw a Phillies team that's not very good against right-handers. So I'll definitely be looking his way. Next game, you got Brewers and Pirates. Jimmy Nelson against Jeff Locke. 7.5 over/under here. Nelson did struggle with left-handed bats last year. A lot of 376 WOBA, 1.38 home runs per 9. Was a big strikeout guy. Had times with his walks. Unfortunately, I mean, John Jay, so he stands out as one of the lefties at target, but he's also first baseman, a spot that you're not tend to be paying down at. He is 3,100 on DK, so he does offer some value there, 2,900 on FanDuel. So if you were going with a Kershaw tonight, a Sale, and you're really paying up a pitching, then he kind of can work your way into that lineup just because he's leading off. So that's kind of what his purpose would be tonight. As far as the other back goes, Gregory Polanco, he's who I'm looking at to take advantage of that lefty struggle there for Nelson. 3,400 on FanDuel, 4,100 on DK there. So kind of a mid-price guy to keep into consideration. Obviously, PNC Park's against him, but Polanco's a guy with speed, smacks him to the gap, and you can just watch him run for days. Also does have stolen base upside. So he's in play for me tonight. As far as the other Pirates go, you can take a look at McCutchen and Marte as a contrarian look tonight, just because it's a 14-game slate and they're not really popping up on anyone's radar. Just because if you look at Nelson, I mean, one, he was decent against right-handers last year, held him to a 255 WOBA. And obviously, PNC Park isn't a place on a full slate that you're searching for a ton of runs. So this is an offense that can produce, but still, I think you are better off leaning towards other directions. As far as on the other side goes, Jeff Locke, kind of your average left-handed pitcher. You can look at guys like Braun. You can look at Domingo Santana. You can look at Lucroy, Chris Carter. If you want to be deep in GPPs, they won't find any cash game room for me. But GPPs, Milwaukee's in play there. But obviously, you do have PNC Park going up against you. But it's not a bad matchup. You look at those four guys; they have hit lefties well, especially for power in the past. So decent numbers there. 7-10 Blue Jays and Red Sox over under of 9. Expect a ton of offense in this game. Red Sox hammered Dickey just a few days ago. You look at those bats from the right side. Bautista hit 2 bombs off Porcello, just off of recent memory here. That is a team that these are two teams that I will be looking to pay up for tonight. I mean, you look at Porcello, and yes, he struggled more so against left-handers, but he still allowed a 3.27 WOBA to righties, 1.04 home runs per 9, 33% hard ball rate over 2015. As far as lefties go, he allowed a 351, but Toronto doesn't have a ton of lefties. Michael Saunders is their only guy on that left side that's worthy of mentioning. And obviously, Fenway, not too favorable for left-handed bats anyway as far as power goes. It actually suppresses homers. So unless you can go Oppo over that monster if you're a lefty, chances of pulling one out in April in Fenway, you got to be kind of perfect at hitting down that line because everything's dying at the track at this time of year. So lefties I'm not too favorable on outside of Ortiz on that side. He's the only one that I feel comfortable with. Really, as far as Dickey goes, he allowed a 322 WOBA to right-handers last season. And knuckleballers are all kind of, it's tough to pick on because you don't know what you're going to get from them. They're going to be on, they're going to be off one night. And you're kind of banking on Dickey to struggle a little bit. But I do like the Boston righties. I like Pedroia. I like Betts. I like Bogaerts, especially if Bogaerts and Betts are getting the green light to run. Although Dickey doesn't allow a ton of stolen bases for a knuckleballer, there's something to keep in mind. But either way, I mean, you're looking at 310 down that left field line. They can easily pop one over the monster if Dickey's ball isn't going. He did allow 1.13 home runs per 9 last season. Ground ball rate's obviously poor as a ground baller or a knuckleballer, so I'll definitely be keeping that in consideration. Those names do have solid success against Dickey. If you want to take BVP into consideration just due to him being a knuckleballer, definitely worth a look tonight. So, and then on that Toronto side, obviously I mentioned Saunders, but Bautista, Encarnacion, Donaldson, Tulowitzki, Pilar, all up top, really looking strong for me. You've hit well in Fenway. You're looking at this matchup. It's nice against the average right-hander of Porcello, subpar you could even call him. So really, those guys are in play for me, especially with that over-under 9. You're looking for a ton of offense in this game, and I believe you'll find it. Next one, you got the Mets and the Indians, over-under of 8. So they are expecting some runs in this game, although I could be leaning in the other direction. Obviously, Bartolo Colon on the hill. Kind of your average arm nowadays, even though he's about 50 years old. Colon allowed a 314 WOBA to lefties last year. Not a strong ground ball rate, 38%. He doesn't walk a ton of guys, so he is going to put the ball in play and just kind of hope he can get outs. You can look at the Indian side of things. You can look at Kipnis. You can look at Lindor. I think it's an interesting play tonight. Carlos Santana as well. As far as the righties go, I'm not really looking at Bird or Davis in that matchup. And on the Mets side, I'm not looking at anyone in that offense Cody Anderson was kind of your average arm. He got his job done. And that's what I believe he'll do tonight. I don't expect on a full game slate to really be picking any Mets in my lineup with how they start the season here. So 7-10, Braves, Marlins, Williams, Perez, Wei-Yin Chen. He is a big favorite tonight, 171. I think he's a cheap arm to look at. Not a bad option, 8,200. He is priced around some other guys, though, that are in consideration for me tonight, like Joe Ross. So overall, and Edinson Volquez as well. Overall, I think he's still a strong play. Obviously, the ballpark factors are going to help him out there moving into Miami, getting out of Camden Yards. He did allow a 348 WOBA to right-handed bats. That is something worth mentioning. And really, I mean, the Braves, they only have one notable right-hander that I'm looking at, and that's Adonis Garcia, who is a right-hander third baseman. Very cheap. He would find his way into my lineup if I'm rolling with the Kershaw, if I'm rolling with the heavy pitching lineup. He's a value with some pop, could be in a good spot to do some damage there against Chen. But outside that, I won't be picking on him at all. On the other side of things, Williams Perez struggled horrendously last season with left-handers. 374 WOBA, allowed 1.37 home runs per 9. Was good against righties, but outside of that, was average against right-handers. Allowed 330 WOBA to right-handed bats. Did have a stronger ground ball rate, did keep the ball in the park, but really, I think you can definitely look at the Marlins as a sneaky stack tonight. Obviously, you like D. Gordon. I really like Christian Yelich as well, but Stanton, Marcell Ozuna also in play for me. Justin Bour, he's a cheap guy with some pop. So really looking at those guys, I think they're pretty intriguing. And definitely will be on my radar as far as tonight's games go, as a little mini stack, as well as working them in and out of cash and GPP games. 7-10, White Sox and Rays, 6.5 total. I'm not picking on anyone here. Chris Sale, Jake Odorizzi, not a fan of bats in that game at all. I think you can look at Chris Sale in cash games and GPPs tonight. Obviously, I'll be looking at him, talking more in depth with him later on. Next one, 805, Vance Worley, Martin Perez, over-under of 9. A lot of offense here. And really, I mean, you can take both sides into consideration, starting with Baltimore. You're looking at what Perez did against right-handed bats last year. Allowed 336 WOBA. Did keep the ball in the park because he does have a strong ground ball rate, but obviously I'm still looking for some pop out of these Baltimore bats. And if you haven't noticed the gift already that DK gave us, Manny Machado, 4,400 tonight, is now shortstop eligible. Third base and shortstop eligible, so that's going to be fun to play around with and build some lineups, especially with some other third basemen on the slate that you can really look at. So thank you, DK. That's a nice gift for us. Not sure what we did to deserve that, but really looking at Machado, you can look at Adam Jones as well. Joey Ricard is another guy whose value, hitting leadoff against Perez. Also, Chris Davis handled the bat pretty well against lefties last season. Yes, he has a high strikeout rate, but if you're going for the full Baltimore stack, he's definitely worth a look. And he did have a 200 ISO against Southpaws last season. Is in a favorable spot to do some damage here tonight. So I do like him. I do like Jones. If he's in the lineup again, just double check. I know he was going through some injury issues. He did play yesterday, but Jones in another favorable spot. And then as far as picking up Vance Worley, you can definitely do it with the lefties of Texas again. He allowed a 347 WOBA, or 346 WOBA to left-handed bats last year, 4.41 FIP, not a great ground ball rate, doesn't miss a ton of bats. Prince Fielder, GPP only, looking at Odor there. He's a nice cash game option. As far as anyone else goes, you can look at Beltry on that right side as well. Nomar Mazara, he's one of my favorite plays tonight as far as value goes. I'll definitely be looking at him, but overall, I mean, not a strong matchup for Worley. 317 will allow to right-handers as well, so you're definitely looking at some Texas bats being in play, and so is Vegas. Next game, 8-10, Mike Pelfrey, Dallas Keuchel. Houston, big favorites in this one because you kind of expect Pelfrey to really get lit up against this Houston team, and you got to be looking at a ton of bats on that side. Pelfrey, I mean, you want to start with left-handers. 367 WOBA allowed last year. just an 11.9% strikeout rate, doesn't miss any bats, and that's good for guys like Luis Valbuena, Colby Rasmus, Jason Castro, all GPP plays tonight because they do have high strikeout rates. And if you're getting a guy who's not missing bats, it makes him just a little bit less risky to play with. So that's nice. So those 3 names are on my radar in GPPs. As far as on the right side goes, Pelfrey was a little bit stronger, 313 WOBA. Did struggle tremendously on the road last season when he was outside of target field. So you are looking at that. You're still looking at Altuve, who's got a little power surge going on right now. Carlos Correa, obviously George Springer, worthy of attention. So really, you can look at Houston. You can look at them as one to be in the stronger stacks on tonight's slate. And then looking on the Tiger side, I just don't want to pick on Dallas Keuchel there. I mean, the guy was really strong last year. Great ground ball rate, 59%. 23% strikeout rate, 0.268 WOBA to right-handed bats. So really, Keuchel strong. They do have some lefty matchers. It is a nice ballpark there to hit in. Justin Upton, JD Martinez, Miguel Cabrera. Obviously, you're looking for Keuchel to have a down day. It would be a very contrarian stack just due to the fact that they are going to be low and owned. I don't expect a ton of people to be on due to Keuchel, but I also don't expect a ton of production. I think you're just hoping Keuchel has an off day and those bats maybe can pop one over the wall or a couple times. So possible, but I think it's more unlikely. 8:15, you got Martinez and Melville on the hill. Cardinals big favorites. Love Martinez in this matchup. I think he's a cheaper option off those big names. I don't think you have to pay up for pricing, and we'll kind of get into a couple of names here that are interesting because Martinez is in play. He's a big favorite. He's a little bit cheaper. And the next name here we'll talk about is a guy I'm looking at as well. But I'm looking at the Reds lefties here once again. Melville, kind of your average arm here. Looking at Carpenter as a decent play. Looking at Jeremy Hasselbaker, a strong value play still. Hitting very solid in that second spot. I mean, really, you're looking at really just a strong outing from him to really start the season. 13 hits in the last 9 games, and does have 3 homers, also 2 stolen bases. So he's doing it all, and you like the matchup is here. He hit well in the spring, so I'll be looking at him yet again. Obviously, Carpenter, Grichuk, Piscotty, those are all great GPP plays tonight, a little bit cheaper. Brandon Moss, GPP plays. So Cardinals are in consideration. I expect most of the offense to come from that side in that 7.5 over-under, so definitely give them a look. Angels and Twins 0-9 to start the season, over-under of 8. Garrett Richards against Tommy Malone. And the Twins, their strikeout rate is tremendously high, and Garrett Richards is another one I think you can come down and look at tonight. It's not a strong line as far as favorites go for the Angels, just because it is almost minus 116. I do expect Richards to come and pick up the win. I also do see him picking up a decent amount of strikeouts in this matchup because that's what Minnesota does. And Richards keeps the ball on the ground. So really, you're looking at him as being one of the stronger options on tonight's slate. I won't be picking on him with any Minnesota bats. I will be looking at a couple Angels guys. You got Tommy Malone out there. He did allow a 331 WOBA to right-handed bats last year, 1.3 home runs per 9. And really, I like the matchup for a guy like Mike Trout, obviously, who is hard to not like a matchup for. But, I think he is worth it looking GPPs as far as paying up for. I mean, we've seen him kind of start to get hot here over the last few games, especially that Oakland series. So looking at him, as far as anyone else that goes in that game, it's hard not to like. I think Pujols is still worth the look, although he's kind of trended downwards against lefties over the last few seasons. So really, that's more of a GPP play. I'm still not in love with the Angels' offense. I think Trout's kind of the only option there. Royals and Athletics, you got Edson Volquez versus Rich Hill, over under 7. I don't expect a ton of offense here. Lorenzo Cain is in play just because he's facing a lefty and crushed lefties last year, but obviously O.Co. not great for hitters. But Cain, he is a guy who kind of can do it all as far as speed goes, can hit for power. He's in a good spot to drive in runs, so he's an interesting play. You could also look at Alcides Escobar just as a punt shortstop, leading off on FanDuel there for just $2,300. If you're looking to pay up elsewhere, you're going to need some of those guys if you're paying heavy at pitching, so he is worth mentioning. Outside of that, I'm not looking at too many guys in that game, especially not on that Oakland side against Volquez, who's been pretty strong to start the year here. Giants, Dodgers, Madison Bumgarner, Clayton Kershaw. I mean, if I can roster Madison Bumgarner in as a hitter, maybe. But outside of that, I'm not taking any hitters from this game. Two elite lefties on the hill. That over-under should just be basically 4 or 5. I don't expect a ton of runs there. Kershaw, heavy favorite at home. Always in play. You're looking at that Giants lineup. Yes, they do have a lot of solid arms or solid bats there, but really Kershaw, I expect him to dominate and go through this lineup. A couple times and be pretty dominant, but he is over 13,000. Can he pay off that price tag against the Giants? That's where it gets iffy for me, and I don't think that's going to be the case. FanDuel, I mean, you're looking at a little bit more lenient as far as pricing goes. 12,800. I still think there's better points per dollar arms on this slate, but I can't blame you for going Kershaw. And we'll stop right there because there are no hitters to talk about in that game. 10:40, Diamondbacks and Padres. You're staying up late tonight if you are, sweating a bit later on. But obviously, another low total here, 6.5. Zach Greinke, James Shields, and two offenses that aren't particularly great. Obviously, we saw the Padres this weekend just get thrashed by Phillies pitching. And you expect the same tonight. And as well as Greinke has been bad in his first two outings, going to get a nice matchup in Petco against these Padres bats. So really, you were looking for Greinke to have one of his dominant outings here tonight. And he is a little bit cheaper, just 10 grand on DK there, 10,400. So he's another one you can kind of come off of as far as, other arms up top. So looking at those guys and looking at the Diamondback side of things, there's one hitter I want to mention, and that is David Peralta. James Shields allowed a 380 WOBA to lefties last season, 2.16 home runs per 9. He gave up a ton of homers, and then Petco was strong for left-handed power. I like Peralta. I like his price tag on both sides. So he's really the only one to look at in that game as far as that things go. So those three games in that 10 o'clock slate there, you're not looking for a ton of offense out of. Make sure you're packing in those Midwest and East Coast games for your bats. So that's going to wrap it up with the slate breakdown. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.